Section 10 of Sun, Moon, and Stars, Astronomy for Beginners. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Sun, Moon, and Stars, Astronomy for Beginners by Agnes Giberne. Section 10. Our Neighbor's Movements. Is not God in the height of heaven? And behold the height of the stars, how high they are! Job 22:12. How high, how distant, how mighty! How little we know about them, yet how overwhelming the little we know! And how wonderful must be our minds to be able to know it! We have now to consider the movements of these distant neighbors. First, their seeming movements. Secondly, their real movements. I have already spoken about the seeming motions of the stars as a whole, once believed to be real, and now known to be only caused by the motions of our earth. For just as the turning of the earth upon her axis makes the sun seem to rise every morning in the east, and to set every evening in the west, so that same continued turning makes the stars seem to rise every evening in the east, and to set every morning in the west. When we speak of the stars as rising in the east, we do not mean that they all rise at one point in the east, but that all rise, more or less, in an easterly direction, northeast, east, and southeast. So also with respect to the west. It is to the east and west of the earth as a whole that they rise and set, not merely to the east and west of that particular spot on earth where one man may be standing. All night long fresh stars are rising and others are setting, and if it were not for the veil of light made by the sunshine in our atmosphere, we should see the same going on all day long as well. There are some constellations or groups of stars always visible at night in our northern hemisphere, and there are some constellations never visible to us, but only seen by people living in the southern hemisphere, in Australia, for instance. There are other constellations which appear in summer and disappear in winter, or which appear in winter and disappear in summer. This change is caused by our earth's journey round the sun, or, as in common language we express it, by the sun's journey round the earth. It is not that the constellations have altered their place in the heavens with respect to the other constellations. It is merely that the sun has so altered his position in the heavens that the group of stars which a short time ago were above the horizon with him by day are now above the horizon without him by night. Mention has been a good many times made of the axis of the earth ending in the north and south poles. If this axis were carried straight onward through space, a long slender pole passing upwards into the sky without any bend, from the North Pole in one direction and from the South Pole in the other, this would be the pole of the heavens. The places of the stars in the sky are counted as so many degrees from the north and south celestial poles, just as the places of towns on earth are counted as so many degrees from the north and south poles of earth. There are atlases of the sky made as well as atlases of the earth. The constellation of the Great Bear is known to all who have ever used their eyes at all to watch the heavens. Almost equally well known are the two bright stars in this constellation named the Pointers, because, taken together, they point in nearly a straight line to a certain important star in the end of the little bear's tail, not very distant. This star, important less from its brightness than from its position, lies close to that very spot in the heavens where the celestial North Pole passes. It is called the Pole Star. Night after night through the year it there remains, all but motionless, never going below the horizon for us in the northern hemisphere, or northern half of the earth, never rising above the horizon for those in the southern hemisphere. It shines ever softly and steadily in its fixed position. If you travel further south, the pole star sinks downward toward the horizon. If you travel further north, the pole star rises higher above the horizon. If you were at the North Pole, you would see the pole star exactly overhead. Very near the pole star is the constellation of the Great Bear, with Cassiopeia nearly opposite on the other side of the Little Bear, and other groups between the two completing the circle. These constellations do not, to us who live in England, rise or set, for they simply move in a circle round and round the pole star, never going below the horizon. All day and all night long this circling movement continues, though only visible at night. It is caused entirely by the earth's own motion on her axis. Lower down, or rather farther off from the pole star, comes another ring of constellations. These in just the same manner appear to travel round and round the pole star, but being farther away, each dips in turn below the horizon, or as we call it, each sets and rises again. And by the time we come to yet another circle of leading constellations, we reach those which are so far affected by the Earth's yearly journey as to be only visible through certain months and to be hidden during other months. If we could stand exactly at the North Pole during part of its 6 months' night, we should see the pole star just overhead, and all the constellations circling round it once in every 24 hours. Those nearest would move slowly in a small ring. Those farthest and lowest down would in the same length of time sweep round the whole horizon. But the stars would not there seem to rise or set. If we were standing at the South Pole, we should see exactly the same kind of seeming movement, only with altogether a different set of stars. If we were standing on the equator at night, we should see the rising and setting very plainly. The whole mass of stars would appear to rise regularly and evenly in an easterly direction, to pass steadily across the sky, each taking its own straightforward path, and to set in a westerly direction. We in England, placed between the pole and the equator, see a mixture of these two motions. Some stars seem to circle round and round, as all would do if we stood at the North Pole. Some stars seem to rise and set, as all would do if we stood at the equator. So much for the seeming movements of the stars. But now about their real movements. Are the stars fixed, or are they not? These seeming daily and yearly motions do not affect the question, being merely caused by our own motions. Trees and hedges may appear to move as we rush past them in a train, yet they are really fixed. During a long while after it was found out that the quick daily movements of all the stars in company were merely apparent, men believed that they really had no proper motions, that is, no movements of their own. For century after century the constellations remain the same. Hundreds of years ago the 7 chief stars of the Great Bear shone in company as they shine now. Who could suppose that each of those 7 stars is hurrying on its path through space, with a speed exceeding far that of the swiftest express train? Yet so it is. Hundreds of years ago the grand group of Orion with belt and sword gleamed brilliantly night by night, as it gleams in these days, and Cassiopeia had her W form, and Hercules and Draco and Andromeda were shaped as they are shaped still. Who would imagine that through those hundreds of years each star of those different constellations was hastening with more or less of speed along its heavenly road? Yet so it is. But if the stars are thus rapidly moving in all directions, how is it that we do not see them move? How is it that night after night, year after year, century after century, even 1,000 years after 1,000 years, the shapes of the constellations remain unaltered? Suppose you and I were standing on the seashore together, watching the movements of scores of seacraft, little boats and large boats, steamers, yachts, and ships. Suppose we stood through a full quarter of an hour looking on. Some might move, it is true, very slowly, yet their movements in every case would plainly be seen. There could be no possibility of mistaking the fact, or of supposing them to be fixed. Just so we see the nearer planets move. Little danger of our supposing them to be fixed stars. In the matter of the stars themselves we must carry our illustration farther. Come with me up to the top of that lofty hill on the border of the sea, and let us look from the cliff. We see still the movements among boats and smacks, yachts and steamers, only the increased distance makes the movements seem slower. But our view is widened. Look on the far horizon and see 3 distant dots, which we know to be ships, 1 or 2 close together, and a third a little way off, making a small constellation of vessels. Watch them steadily for a quarter of an hour. You will detect no movement, no increased distance or nearness between any 2 of the 3. The group remains unchanged. Are they really moving? Of course they are, more or less rapidly, probably with differing speed and in different directions. But at so great a distance 1/4 of an hour is not long enough for their motions to become visible to the naked eye. If we could watch longer, say for 2 or 3 hours, that would make all the difference. If only we could watch longer. But the hundreds and even thousands of years during which men have watched the stars sink at our vast distance into no more than 1/4 of an hour spent in watching the far-off ships from the hilltop. The motions cannot be detected. In 10,000 years you might see something. In 50,000 years you might see much. But 4 or 5,000 years are not sufficient. One other mode there is by means of which the movements of the ships on the horizon might be made plain. Suppose you had no more than the quarter of an hour to spare, but suppose you had at your command a powerful telescope. Then you may practically bring the ships nearer, and by magnifying the small, slow, distant motions you may make them, as it were, larger, quicker, more easy to see. Telescopes will do this for us, likewise, in the matter of the stars. By means of telescopes, with the assistance of careful watching and of close calculation, it has been found that the stars are really moving quickly, each one in its own pathway. The very speed of some of them has been measured. One fair star, Capella, speeds away from us at about the rate of 1,000 miles each minute, or some 16 or 17 miles each second. And the pale pole star, friend of mariners, is on the other hand advancing toward us no less rapidly. The brilliant Sirius recedes at a pace of over 26 miles per second. There is good reason to believe that every star seen in the heavens, every star visible in most powerful telescopes, to the tune of millions, is incessantly hastening onward. Hastening whither? God knows, we do not. Each radiant sun has its goal, but where that goal may be we cannot tell. Each doubtless has its own pathways around some distant center, the center of that sun cluster or stellar system or starry universe to which it belongs. Each follows its own pathway, controlled and regulated by the united attractions of all other suns belonging to the same star system, even as the planets of the solar system are controlled by the central sun and influenced by each brother planet. Yet it may be that not all the stars in our stellar system are so controlled. Some few we know traveling at so vast a rate of speed as to have earned the title, whether rightly or wrongly, of runaway stars. 16 miles, 20 miles, 26 miles per second sounds rapid enough, but these rates are eclipsed. A certain dim double star, 61 Cygni, journeys at least twice as fast as Capella, or some 36 miles a second. This may still be a controlled speed, and 61 Cygni can still be counted a permanent member of our system, subject to the restraint of brother stars. But when we reach a certain degree of speed, then, it is conjectured, the power of this control may fail. One faint star, known as Groombridge 1830, flies at the rate of over 200 miles each second, and Arcturus, a brilliant star of the first magnitude, is believed to whirl along at the pace of 375 miles each second. A star pursuing such a headlong career as either of the two last named may, not improbably, defy the combined control of all the other stars. Such stars are, perhaps, not members of our stellar system, but passing visitors, entering from one direction, passing away in another direction. The thought of such bright suns traveling through long ages from far, far distant star systems, entering our own, and during ages more journeying among our innumerable stars, only, in ages yet future, to pass away into depths of space beyond, perhaps to join some other starry universe, could aught be more full of suggestiveness as to the meaning of infinity? The life of mankind sinks to a point by comparison, the life of a man to the flutter of a mayfly. And whether or no the story of runaway stars be as thus pictured, such distances do exist. If all the stars are moving, what of our sun? Our sun is a star. And our sun also is moving. He is pressing onward in a wide sweep through space, bearing along with him his whole family, planets, satellites, comets, meteors, round or towards some far-off center at a probable rate of 16 or 18 miles each second. And where are we going? This has been in part discovered. If you and I were driving through a forest of trees, we should see trees on each side of us seeming to move backward, while behind they would close together and in front they would open out. Astronomers, and first among them William Herschel, reasoned that if our solar system were really in motion, we ought to be able to see these changes among the stars. And some such changes have become visible through careful watching, not so much those ahead and behind as those at the sides. It is not actually so simple a matter as looking at the trees in a forest, because the trees would be at rest, whereas each star has his own particular real motion, as well as his seeming change of place caused by our sun's motion. It is more like moving in a small steamer at sea among hundreds of other craft, each of which is going on its own way, at the same time that all on either side seem to move backward because we are moving forward. So each movement had to be noted, and the real motions had to be separated from the seeming backward drift of stars to the right and left of the sun's pathway. The result of all this is that the sun, with his planets, is found to be hastening toward a certain far-off constellation named Hercules. Where the sun and his planets will journey in future ages, no living man can say. Indeed, though it is a question which does not lack interest to a thoughtful mind, yet there are numberless other questions about centuries near at hand which concern man far more nearly. The history of the universe and the history of this earth of ours, in its close and wonderful connection with God and with Christ our Redeemer, must have advanced many broad stages before our sun and his attendant planets can have traveled so far that any change will be apparent in the shape of the star constellations which spangle our sky. End of section 10. Read by Randy Boyum, Denver, Colorado, December 9th, 2024.